Hey guys, thanks very much for tuning in today. I'm Joe, and I'm here with a replay of a match against Esper Control. Looking at the opening hands, I've got two Cavern of Souls and an Oboro, certainly enough land. AEther Vial, Dismember, and Spreading Seas gives me access to a lot of interaction, but currently only have one creature with Merrow Reejerey. These kinds of hands that have everything except creatures, I tend to keep because half the deck is creatures, and we can't help but draw into some of them. We play these cards, Spreading Seas and Dismember and AEther Vial, for a reason. AEther Vial is actually, particularly important to be able to resolve on turn one. So even though there's not a lot of pressure in the hand at the beginning, we're going to be able to establish a strong opening, and we'll have a bit of time and card draw to start hitting those extra creatures. So this is an easy keep for me. Let me know what you guys think about this keep, but I think it's totally fair. On the opponent's side, they've got 3 lands and Liliana of the Veil, so that's great. Think Twice. This is a card that seems to be a staple of these Esper control decks. I'm not sure why exactly, because you don't see it in other blue-based control decks like Jeskai and Grixis. It seems to be exclusive to Esper. Esper Charm, like Think Twice, is pretty much a card draw spell. It does have 2 other modes, Destroy Target Enchantment or Target Player Discards 2 cards, but those modes are both very situational. The last mode is pretty weak if I've got a lot of cards in hand, because I can just choose, if I've got extra lands or if I've got unnecessary Spreading Seas against an opponent who's already given me access to Island Walk. So it's possible that Esper Charm is a spell that's taking up spots in this deck that should be devoted to actual creature removal, because all the card draw that it provides, they're still just going to be drawing into more things like Esper Charm and Think Twice. It looks like they're leaning pretty heavily on Liliana of the Veil to deal with creatures, but we'll see how it goes. Also a Mana Leak, so as far as these 2 decks go, what their respective plans are, both of these opening hands look very keepable. So we did both keep. The opponent opens with Polluted Delta, which shows me that he's on black and blue. I hit a Mutavault, which, like Cavern of Souls, is excellent against control decks because it plays around sorcery speed removal. The opponent fetches a tapped Hallowed Fountain, and that shows me now that he's on Esper, black, blue, and white. Opponent plays another fetch land. On my turn, AEther Vial goes up to 1, and I draw into a Lord of Atlantis. However, it's still early in the game. Decks that run blue and white need access to at least 2 white sources to resolve a Supreme Verdict. So at this point, my strategy is play Spreading Seas out, take the opponent off of one of his white sources, draw an extra card, see more of what the opponent's strategy is, take AEther Vial up, and in general, just give myself some breathing space to develop a more powerful strategy, a more accurate strategy. On my end step, the opponent got an untapped Godless Shrine going down to 16 in order to cast Think Twice. He drew into a Ghost Quarter, and for his turn, hits a Snapcaster Mage. So good cards, but they all look pretty weak in combination. I mean, if the Snapcaster Mage... Okay, so here's Liliana. She's almost certainly going to make me discard something. Let's look at the opponent's graveyard right now. If the opponent only has access to flashing back cards like Esper Charm or Mana Leak, it's not nearly as powerful as decks that are using Snapcaster Mage to flash back things like Lightning Helix and Path to Exile. So we see all these powerful cards, Liliana of the Veil, Snapcaster Mage, but they don't seem to be getting pushed to their maximum in this particular type of deck. So Liliana does go up to 4. I'm going to discard my second Cavern of Souls since I already have one on the board. I drew into Master of Waves, which is obviously a very excellent card. I'll play out Merrow Reejerey. The opponent's going to be able to deal with that guy with Liliana of the Veil, but I'll be able to follow up with Lord of Atlantis and hopefully get her off the table next turn. We see the opponent drew into a Sphinx's Revelation, which is very clunky. I mean, you certainly don't want to resolve it for 1. The opponent played his 4th land, but immediately used it to get rid of my Mutavault. I guess they want to protect their Liliana. Of course, he could have waited to use that, but he chose to do it now. Liliana -2s, and Merrow Reejerey bites the dust. I'll go ahead and bring in Lord of Atlantis, who I'm prioritizing here. I could have chosen to sacrifice him instead of Merrow Reejerey, but with access to Island Walk, I choose to stick with Lord of Atlantis here. So for my draw step, I hit a Harbinger of the Tides. Not terrible, it's a body. I'm just happy to be drawing Merfolk. So with the Dismember in my hand, I can safely play around sort of Ambush Viper mode from Snapcaster Mage. As we saw a moment ago, the opponent doesn't really have anything great to flash back here, or really anything at all, since Snapcaster Mage costs 2 mana, and he's got no other spells in here that cost 1 mana to flash back. So if he does try to Ambush Viper my Lord of Atlantis, I can Dismember the Snapcaster before blocks and still get into Liliana. So I'm going to go straight to combat here with my Lord of Atlantis. So he's going to get Liliana off the board, and I'm going to follow up, making great use of Cavern of Souls, playing around open blue mana, bringing 4 elementals, including the 1 devotion from Spreading Seas. Now with Liliana, you'll remember the opponent chose to discard his Mana Leak, which is a good decision with this Cavern of Souls on the board. On my end step, the opponent's tapping out, probably going to try to resolve Esper Charm for its most popular mode, drawing 2 cards. Okay, there's nothing I can do about that, so that'll resolve, and the opponent hit 2 lands. They drew into Sorum Solemn Visitor, but that wasn't going to help him win, so he scooped it up, and we'll go ahead and see how the second game went. Okay, the opponent kept right away. Let's see what that looks like. He's got 3 lands, including Urborg, and the Marsh Flats. Let's think what land he might get. Supreme Verdict, here's that double white in the casting cost. Esper Charm again, Think Twice again, and now Cryptic Command. So very intensive casting costs here. He's going to need 3 blue, and he's going to need double white. Currently only has access to 1 blue, so this Marsh Flats is almost certainly going to get cracked for a Hallowed Fountain. But he is going to need to hit another white source at some point to get the Supreme Verdict online. So we saw the opponent already kept, and on my side of things, 4 lands, which is a lot, but one of them is Cavern of Souls, which is a high priority in this matchup, so easy keep for me as well. The opponent starts with a tapped Creeping Tar Pit, and I draw a second Master of Waves, which I'm rarely unhappy to see. All right, so the opponent goes ahead and plays out that Marsh Flats after drawing into a Dismember. Now Dismember, quite good against Master of Waves. I will play out my Cavern of Souls, naming Merfolk, and rather than lead with the more important Master of the Pearl Trident, I'll play out the Harbinger of Tides, because I don't expect he's going to have many creatures that I need to bounce. So good just to get the 2/2 body on the battlefield now. The opponent, just like last game, on the end of my second turn, cracks a fetch land for an untapped shock to resolve Think Twice. Not the most powerful play, I have to say. Taking 3 life to resolve a draw 1. The opponent plays Urborg, and we can see that they've drawn into a Watery Grave, still no access to the second white mana that he's looking for. Passes the turn with the 3 lands untapped. I'm going to play out my Island Walk Lord and try to swing for 3 with the Harbinger. Now the opponent has access to Dismember, but looks like he's opting to resolve an Esper Charm here. With no counter magic in hand, that's going to resolve. And he hits some powerful spells. I think I mentioned last game, Sphinx's Revelation is quite clunky in the early part of the game. This is a card that you want to see later on, but in order for it to be good at all, the opponent has to control these early turns. We haven't seen Path to Exile. We do see Dismember here, and 2 Supreme Verdicts are quite scary, but as a 3-color deck, it has to come up pretty often, especially when you run cards like Creeping Tar Pit and Urborg that don't let you actually fix your mana like fetch lands do. You're going to be stuck on awkward mana sometimes, and we see that this is one of those situations. The opponent drew into another very strong card, Zealous Persecution. However, this card gets weaker and weaker the more lords that we get on the table. Actually, it only takes 1 to be pretty safe against them. At this point, I can resolve a Master of Waves. He'll make a bunch of elemental tokens. If the opponent wants to remove those guys with Zealous Persecution, that's actually a pretty decent use of the card, but it wouldn't actually deal with any of my Merfolk. So some of these cards that Esper chooses to play, seeming a little bit weak. I actually think of the fringe control strategies, in Modern, Mardu actually might be a stronger choice. Mardu gets access to these black and white spells, but they also get access to red for Lightning Bolt and Lightning Helix, and I don't know, wacky things like Nihiri if they want to go that way. So the opponent played a Watery Grave tapped, which is an interesting decision because it would have given him access to his 3rd blue mana, and he could have played Cryptic Command if he wanted. It looks like he's leaning instead on this Dismember, potentially the Anguished Unmaking, though this is going to require him to lose 3 life, and I'm clocking him pretty heavily as it stands. Anguished Unmaking, for those of you unfamiliar with it, is a pretty new card from Shadows over Innistrad, the most recent release set. It is being touted as an updated version of Vindicate, a card that's not legal in Modern. It has the same casting cost, is a sorcery instead of an instant, and allows you to destroy any target permanent. And so despite its sorcery speed, it's a much stronger card than Anguish Unmaking because you can destroy lands with it. So Vindicate, not legal in Modern. Anguish Unmaking is the closest substitute. So this guy trying to make use of this card, but a Path to Exile would just be much better in this situation. Alright, so passes with the 3 mana up, and I drew into some counter magic, which is quite nice. I'll go ahead to combat with mana up for Dispel, should I need access to it. Swinging for 5, the opponent taps out to play Dismember. Now, I'm swinging for 5 each turn. The opponent would go down to 9 if I counter this, and I'll continue to clock the opponent for 5 next turn. So I think I'm going to choose to protect the board that I've established here. I can always rebuild with Masters of Waves later. I'm not in a huge rush, and with 5 power on the table already, probably better to use this Dispel while I have the mana up now. Okay, so for the opponent's turn, we see he continues to whiff on white mana. He's going to pass again with all of his spells, or all of his relevant spells, being at instant speed. So I drew a Cursecatcher for the turn, and having noticed that the opponent missed his land drop, Cursecatcher is actually pretty valuable despite being fairly late into the game at this point. Control decks play some pretty heavy spells, like Cryptic Command and Sphinx's Revelation, and Cursecatcher at the very least slows them down. So I'm going to go ahead to my declare attacks. Actually, I go to the start of combat, see if the opponent has anything, and he does in fact want to tap my team and draw. So that resolves, and the opponent hits an Esper Charm off of that. So I didn't get to push any damage this turn, but I am going to get that Cursecatcher out on the board. The Cursecatcher only adds 2 power to the board, moving 5 up to 7. It wouldn't be a 1-turn clock, so I'm going to actually commit one of my Masters of Waves as well. I feel like it's a good time to start applying a lot of pressure. The Master of Waves brings 6 elemental tokens, so a lot of power. The opponent is drawing very terribly here. So let's think about their options actually before we go into my turn. Anguish Unmaking could deal with the Master of Waves, wiping out all of this power, but he would go from 9 down to 6 life, and then I would be swinging for 7 with the remaining 3 creatures. So this is probably not the best option. As I mentioned earlier, Esper Charm doesn't have a removal mode, so that's not going to be a help. Think Twice for 2 mana would then constrict the opponent's access to casting other spells with my Cursecatcher on the board. I guess they could cast Think Twice and hope to hit a Dismember or a Path to Exile, but again, removing any one of my creatures is not going to be enough. Zealous Persecution, though, might actually be enough. If he gives all of my creatures -1/-1 now, the elementals would all die, and these guys would all just take a hit on their power. So instead of being buffed by the Lord, they would just actually be all of their original power. So 2, 2, 1, and this Lord would actually go down to 1. So I would only be swinging for 6 this turn. So Zealous Persecution would get the opponent another draw step and another main phase. So I don't know exactly what just happened. Let's see. Oh, I guess at his end step he had to discard. So he discarded an Esper Charm. Alright, I think I'm just going to go straight to combat here. If the opponent wants to try to resolve a Cryptic Command, of course I have Cursecatcher on the board. That was the main purpose of playing that guy out. Pretty easy decision just to turn everybody sideways here. And we're expecting to see the opponent to play this Zealous Persecution here. But instead it looks like he played Think Twice. A very, very strange decision because now Zealous Persecution is not an option. Even though he has the mana, I can just sacrifice Cursecatcher. So, yeah, just a poor decision here. He draws into a Ghost Quarter, which is good, or would be good if he had another turn, because he could tap all of these lands and then kill one of his lands and get a white source to resolve Supreme Verdict. And the opponent, would be right back in it. So just a huge misstep there. At this point, he's going to show me the 2 Supreme Verdicts and tell me that he had no mana. But as I just pointed out, not optimal play. But it's great to see a deck like Esper Control being played in Modern. A big reason why I love playing Modern so much is that it's so diverse, so open, and there's a lot of people testing lots of different types of builds. So that's it. A pretty quick 2 games. Please leave any comments you might have. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thank you.